Welcome. Today we're going to be looking at how to import data from Aries directly into the PalantirPLAN portfolio application. If you've not yet seen the demonstration or introduction to PalantirPLAN, I encourage you to visit our homepage at www.palantirsolutions.com, click on the links and videos, and take a look at that introduction before continuing. What you're currently seeing right now is a PalantirPLAN file with data inputted directly from an Aries database that I have. What I'm going to do is actually kind of walk you through the steps on how we populated this, including querying the database, setting up our mappings and templates. So what I'm going to do first is close this down and launch a new PalantirPLAN file. So what you'll see is this white space with multiple tabs. The first thing we want to do is create a connection to a database. Here you have multiple data sources. We're going to be focusing on the database loader. Likewise, we can have multiple database connections, so you can connect to multiple Aries databases at one time if you wanted to. You can also delete them and rename these types. What you'll see next is I have these mapping templates. And these mapping templates are always available to you when you launch the application from a user standpoint. And what they represent are XML mappings, so they're stored as a XML string, meaning that you can import them, export them to various different sources, and email them around. Likewise, if you can import one that's been mailed to you. So what I'm going to do now is actually create a new one and show you how the ODBC connection works. So in this one, I'm going to call this one sample number 2. And this basically brings up our dialog for our mapping template. Now, the first thing we do, you can see there's no connect button. We want to connect to a data source. Because Aries uses ODBC to interface with the databases, we're going to choose that method for this purpose. So I've connected an ODBC data source. I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to prompt me to configure this data source. What you'll see here in this drop-down is a list of all the ODBC connections that I currently have on my machine. Likewise, we can kind of verify that selecting our ODBC window, and we can kind of see that we have this Aries demo, and likewise we have it here. So we can test it, make sure it's still valid, and hit OK. So now you can see this data populates. What I'm going to do now is close this and go back to my original Aries mapping template. And now you can actually see I've got a pick list that's here selected by reserved class and then by category. What we're going to actually do is kind of go through and edit this. So the first thing that we need to verify is that we actually have a Aries data set with results that are populated. In this example, I've got an AC monthly, an AC one line, and an AC property that I'm going to be pulling data from. In this AC monthly, I've got every stream that I want to report on, or at least to be able to view within my PalantirPLAN portfolio, populated various streams for this particular scenario that I'm going to be referencing. For a breakdown of all these streams, you can consult the Aries manual, or you can contact a Palantir employee who can assist you in breaking that down. Likewise, we have summary and one-line information located under the one-line tab, the appropriate scenario, and we have several properties and attributes available to us as well. Note that I've got this PalantirPLAN type populated. This is a very pivotal and important tool within PalantirPLAN. It's how we set up our business rules. So this is something that we have users set up in their database, ideally. Likewise, if you've got a very sophisticated SQL user, they could do this sort of on the fly. And we'll get into that shortly. So now that we've got a populated data set with a standard scenario, i.e. Palantir in this example, this is what we're going to be importing into the PalantirPLAN software. So I'm going to toggle back to the application, go into my mapping template, and click Edit. So you can see that I'm connected to that Aries demo database. I'm going to select Connect. And now I'm going to step through my additional tabs here. Variables. And what I'm going to do is expand this. So you can see that I have a SQL script here. I can hit Execute. And what it's going to do, it's going to take a few seconds to run against that code. And what it'll do, once it's executed, it's going to make everything available down here so that I can actually go through and do mapping. So what we've actually identified here on the left side are variables within our plan configuration file. Again, this is important to make sure that you've kind of watched the demonstration of plan. So I'm associating this production total variable with my net BOE total. I've also imported net volume. And what I'm doing here in this query is basically using the streams from my AC monthly table and just renaming them to something a little bit more friendly. Likewise, this project name is lease. I'm using the lease name so I can actually sync my periodic variables to my summary variables, to my project properties, to my settings. So we want to make sure that you have one variable, i.e. prop num, but prop num doesn't show up as, it's going to show up as a name here within the application. So usually lease name or some concatenation can work. Likewise, our project scenario and price scenario, these are more focused towards our cache application. We can do some more additional work on that as we have a little bit more progress. So I've got a periodic variable. This is the data I'm bringing in from my AC monthly. I've gone ahead and mapped the variables that I wanted to see. Summary variables, I'm going to go ahead and execute this as well. And what I'm bringing in from that one-line table is the net revenue interest and gross EURs. So M41 or M21 and M22 appropriately to bring these in. Again, I've flagged the scenario to tie. And project properties, I'm actually doing another query against the AC property table to make sure that I've got my various attributes. Again, the lease is making sure that's the key that's signaled. One thing, you don't want duplicates, so you want to have something a little unique. You may want to concatenate a well number and a lease name. So what I've done here is gone in and mapped various different attributes. Down here, this is the display that you're going to see over here in the hierarchy. So currently I have it broken down by reserved class and then by reserved category. Likewise, I could add a new row, put something in here like field name. And finally, I have the settings tab. Now this is a very important tab because it helps the overarching functionality of the application. So I'm going to go ahead and execute this again. My key is lease, so I'm keying off this information. Partner name, you can actually manually type some data in here. I'm calling myself company. Working interest, I'm actually mapping it in from the AC property table. You could bring it in from the one line. This is the key. This project type is where it needs to be picked up. And what we're doing is flagging a variable that we've created in the AC property table. The reason this becomes important is, again, within PalantirPLAN, we can apply different rules in our configuration files, i.e. create a business rule that says anything that's marked as base cannot be shifted, or anything that's marked as base cannot be divested. And that becomes very critical. So spending a little bit of time up front conditioning your data makes the process run very smoothly. Down here on the bottom, we have some project weighting scenarios and price scenario weightings. These are, if we wanted to bring in the same data set weighted at different levels, or if you wanted to bring in a high, base, low, this is where we would set them and weight them appropriately if you were going to do a Swanson's mean off the same data set, or if we had a low, high, mid scenario within Aries. So I'm going to hit OK. And now what happens is this template is going to refresh automatically, and we'll see an adjustment in our pick list here. So now we actually have the field name that we added. And now we can actually go through and select specific projects or specific areas that we want to bring in. So what I'm going to do is just, to keep it brief, I'm just going to load my possibles and my Bravo PUDs. Now I'm going to actually hit load, and it's going to take a few seconds to queue up. While that's going, the big things to remember are these mapping templates. You'll always have access to them, so every time you set up a new portfolio, they'll be available to you. From a best practice standpoint, I like to do versioning, so I'll type version 3.7, 3.8, and it's just a little bit easier to kind of organize them and export them. So you can see we're actually loading the data. It'll give us a little bit of a log, viewed successfully, so we can actually see what's going on here. If you do have any errors, it'll show up here. Warning, we have no warnings. Looks like everything loaded successfully. That's great. And now if we actually went back and reran some economics and wanted to reload, we could actually reset project properties and re-import. So that concludes how we load data into Aries, from Aries into PalantirPLAN. If you have any further questions, you can get a hold of us at www.PalantirSolutions.com or email us at info@PalantirSolutions.com. Thanks a lot.